Did that just fall off?
Yeah.
There's our cold open.
It was back in like the end of Q3, I think it was, large companies starting to make their their annual reports, the shareholders meetings are happening. CEOs are delivering financials to everybody. And you started seeing a lot of information coming out about the purported failure of the plant-based food and bev industry. And particularly startling was, Beyond Meats. What was it called? Beyond Foods?
Yeah.
Beyond Meat or whatever the fuck it's called.
The parent company of Beyond Meat. Yeah.
Beyond, lost like 90% of their market cap in a really short period of time. McDonald's had launched the McPlant in 2022 and like pretty quietly pulled it off the menu like less than a year later.
Well, I don't really eat at McDonald's, but I never heard of it or saw it.
Yeah.
So that says something.
Yeah, people didn't want it. We've Impossible Foods, same thing. Like all of these companies are just, you may see a lot of shelf space dedicated to them. You may read a lot about it in the media, but nobody's really buying the stuff, or at least it's the market's far more tempered than expected.
Maybe there was a greater hype around them that hasn't really translated to sustained repeat purchase.
Mm-hmm. And
there was also some information that came out about like some of the components of these foods that they're putting in, like, different dyes and things to make them look pink like meat. And like, you have to do a lot to make whatever, a black bean or a lentil or something look like beef. You have to process it heavily. And I think hopefully people are waking up to an extent that it's the processing of things that the further it gets from its whole food state, the less nutritious value it has for you. So
I think they relied on like marketing by subtraction to generate interest in their products, being that like the whole reason you should buy these things is because it's not meat.
Yeah.
And then they realized that like that's like not working. So they started adapting ways to make it more like meat, make it bleed, or to make it taste more, have a consistency of texture, more like a beef patty would, and it just doesn't seem like that's really bearing fruit for those companies.
Yeah.
So then, you have a PR campaign, a really good one in the You Are What You Eat documentary and the Stanford Twin study, and all that detailed, and all of the same kind of, parroted arguments that it presented. And every, registered dietitian with a fucking LinkedIn account or Instagram account or whatever talking about how incredible this information is, and how it's all a must watch without really like any shred of analysis of the study itself, or, digging deep into what the biases were in that film or in that paper. So you have all of that. And then you have this bubbling up out of that right after that movie came out. I started seeing a ton of media about lab cultivated meat.
3D printed steaks and stuff like that. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, these are industrially processed. I mean, in very sophisticated labs, very expensive to make these things. They've been working on cultivated meat for a decade now. But what they were realizing was people people wanted, people who are eating plant-based, doing it for, climate reasons, doing it for health reasons, doing it for ethical reasons, whatever reasons they come up with. And I'm not knocking an individual for believing those things. I'm knocking the system who's lying to the individual about the impact that's actually, positive or negative. Like, we get a lot of falsehood spread about the negative impact of eating meat, and we get a lot of misinformation spread about the benefits of eating plant-based. So that's the wheels just churning, the wheels of capitalism churning. But people who are buying plant-based meat alternatives, alt meat, they want a meat experience. So they are, and the cultivated meat takes the cruelty out of it. It gives you, in theory, the same experience without all of the negative impacts. However, the negative impacts are pretty obvious so far. I mean, for one, do you know what it costs to make at this point, like a kilogram of lab cultivated meat?
I have no idea, but how much?
So the big problem right now is the medium to make some of this meat, it's like a reagent that they use, it's like a cell culture media, costs like almost $400 a liter, and takes about 1,200 liters to make a kilogram of meat.
Oh my God!
So we're talking like almost $500,000
to make a kilo of meat.
Yeah, they're like not exactly accessible to like the average grocery shopper.
What? What?
So,
a kilogram for people that are working in the imperial system, just about the same weight as maybe a pair of shoes.
2.2 pounds of meat.
Pair
right?
of shoes.
Is that what a kilo is? Or is it
2.2.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the same amount of meat, I can go to the co-op right now and buy 2 pounds. Let's call it 3 pounds of ground beef, raised right here in Montana, grass-fed, grass-finished, for $21.
Totally.
And that takes into account the cost of raising that animal, right?
And
like the farmer, the rancher had to make a profit to sell that product, right?
It tastes delicious. It offers all of the benefits that you're hoping for from a nutrition standpoint. It's unequivocally better for the environment.
Well, yeah, because now I'm thinking, okay, well, this reagent that they have to use to create this cultured lab meat, like that has to be made somewhere. Mm-hmm. And if this is an environmental climate conversation, what are the byproducts of the production of that product? How much energy is consumed throughout this whole process? If it takes 1,200 liters of a reagent to make a kilogram of meat, what's the carbon footprint of that process?
I mean, yeah, the labs I've worked in, you can buy some of these mediums already mixed. Lots of times, these are sensitive cultures you're working with. Sometimes you're buying different reagents from all over the country and world and mixing them into a cell culture medium. So,
and they all have to be
shipped. They all come in plastic bottle. Yeah, I mean, there's untold, countless volumes of CO2 emitted in order to to bring this stuff to market.
Oh my God. But it feels better because it's just a clump of cells.
Yeah. And the FDA, has in the FDA and USDA and their expedited regulatory pathways that they've really rolled out en masse over the last 4 years.
Are they using emergency use authorization to make this lab-grown meat?
Yeah. I mean, they've approved cell cultured chicken for sale. I don't know that the beef has been, or I don't even want to call it beef. I mean, we'll just keep going.
We should come up with an alternative.
Fatty meat paste.
No. That's good. That's the worst marketing I've ever heard. Let's continue to call it that.
So, yeah, I mean, fatty meat paste. So they're absolutely what they're doing right now, because no one is buying the plant burgers, because no one has figured out like how to make fatty meat paste, economically feasible yet. guess what they're doing?
They're gonna blend them together.
They're gonna fucking blend them together, dude.
Yes.
So
It's the box wine equivalent of meat imitations.
So yeah, there's a company that called Sci-Fi.
I would never buy food from a company called Sci-Fi. It's a bad idea. That's like Sci-Fi also makes the machine in Star Trek or whatever that like just like, you know, materializes your food right there in front of you.
Yeah, well, Sci-Fi is doing a 90-10 mix, plant to fatty meat paste.
Oh God!
And that, like, I like in the future, like that's how they want us to refer to our meat. You know, like now it's 90-10 lean to fat. Like,
I'm so upset by this. Just the extent to which humans feel compelled to just fuck with nature for God knows what reason. Just
we
just need to learn to leave it well enough alone and just work in concert with nature, right? Like it's just ridiculous to me to think that people would say something like, "Oh, like animals don't want to die." Well, of course animals don't want to die, but they will eventually.
Yeah.
And when they do, if it's in the wild, they're going to be eaten alive, torn limb from limb by some predator versus killed very humanely, and at least in a, you know, regenerative perspective, or if you're hunting. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent there, but it's just this.
Oh yeah. I mean,
ridiculous.
we're going to keep going like over time and continue like revisiting this. I just, the arguments are so flimsy and circular from some of the, you know, some of these executives of these companies. I mean, I saw a little hot take from the Impossible Foods CEO, who again, remember that You Are What You Eat was an advertisement for Impossible Foods, Beyond Meat, and Miyake's Creamery. Like those three brands were featured so prominent. I've never seen brands featured so prominently in a documentary.
Is there any evidence that they contributed to the?
Oh, totally.
They paid to be
Beyond Meat supported Christopher Gardner's research, and the production company that did the whole thing has a long history of supporting plant-based diet research. You know, there's a quote from the head of Impossible Foods saying something along the lines of like, you know, humans haven't figured out how to scale beef production from carbohydrates or from plants or something like that. And it's like, bullshit, dude. The cattle is like the most elegant processor of cellulose into, you know, the cattle can process things that we can't.
Yeah.
And turn it into everything that we need.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know? And then you look at, like, I saw another quote from this guy who runs Sci-Fi, and he says, you know, climate change has led to Dust Bowl conditions in the Midwest. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, what is really leading to the Dust Bowl conditions in the Midwest are monocropping corn, soy, and wheat, which have an inflated value because we are feeding them to animals that shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah, imagine if you turn a vast majority of the, you know, the land that is monocropping those three cash crops and turn it back to grassland. What would happen at that point for climate change? You know, that's a huge carbon sink. It's a huge carbon sink. And you wouldn't be spraying, artificial, you know, chemical fertilizers and pesticides all over it. And cows can eat that grass, and they can, as you said, very elegantly turn something that we can't process, grass, into something that is like one of the most nutrient-rich bioavailable foods that we know of. And I only say that because we've only been on Earth, and maybe there's something better on another planet. Who knows?
Probably. I mean, maybe there is, but probably not. I mean, they're
space cows, dude.
I'm sure
space cows.
Dude, space cow probably is fucking so good.
Probably so good. Imagine a cow raised in zero gravity. Just the perfect marbling. Probably be really fatty, actually.
Well, I'm going to call. I think that we should follow the lead of Italy Hungary just announced that they're probably gonna do the same. Let's fucking ban cultivated meat. Fuck cultivated meat, dude.
Dude, lab cultured anything is dubious if you ask me. Mm-hmm. I'm reluctant to want to rely on the government prohibition of things. I think that prohibitions create black markets. We saw it happen in the 20s with the prohibition of alcohol.
Okay, well, let's how about we just don't.
But I think that raising these points, creating this conversation, is going to have a grassroots effect on the failure of the industries that would rather see lab cultured meat than humanely raised, regeneratively raised beef and other, sources of animal protein for human consumption. To me, it's all consumer driven. Once people found out they were putting these weird colorings and chemicals and shit into Beyond Burger, the stock tanked. Well, I mean, once people realized, well, it doesn't really taste that good, the stock tanked. The product, like the proof is in the pudding, literally. And I think it's really that people have been very carefully propagandized to believe that their dietary choices are going to cause the end of the planet. And I think that there are some really sound scientific minds and powerful voices with huge platforms that are completely shredding that narrative. And anyone who's in any way intellectually curious and honest is digging into these arguments and realizing that, like you said, they're extremely flimsy. You poke around a little bit and the inconsistencies are just everywhere. So to me, it's happening. We don't need the government to ban anything.
Well, and thank God those folks are out there doing it. The big problem and the way it needs to stop, the funding has to dry up. Like how many untold billions of venture capital dollars have gone into Impossible, Beyond, have gone into just the R&D phase of this cultivated meat thing.
You know what? So many, true. And just to make a follow-up point on this, to me, that's fine. That's fine. Because those are private funds going to fund something that the investors see profit potential in. What I think is inexcusable is that when there is government subsidy that distorts the market, right? If you have the government subsidizing wheat, soy, and corn, then you don't have a fair price discovery mechanism to learn how expensive those commodities would be in an open market, right? And so, if you have government grant funding or something going to studying lab cultured meat, for example, that may be all well and good in the research phase, but it's the same thing that happens with green energy. You have all of these projects propped up by government money that you come back and realize aren't profitable. They don't have the sustainability financially to actually make them a viable business. You're seeing this with EVs, right? Big manufacturers like Ford, and Chevy, who have put just billions of dollars and have staked everything on making EVs the future of their brands, are coming back and saying the demand just isn't there, right? The proof is not in the pudding, and it's been distorted. Money is just untold amounts of money have been wasted because of these sort of like centrally planned initiatives that we have to do this, we have to go this way, we have to change the world for the better because the climate, because ethics, because whatever. It's all bullshit.
Oh, dude, that's how we fucking got here. Like the ag czar, I forget his name, but the ag czar during the Nixon era, basically told every farmer, like, get big or get the fuck out. And so they all turned to corn, soy, wheat, big ag monocropping, which has gotten us to this point. And so the reason I brought up the VC thing is kind of I would like to, I think the imperative should be like, because we're probably not going to be able to change the government funding side, that shenanery very easily yet. We've got a ways to go there. But what we can do is compel, some of these private funds to put that money into areas that are going to people are demanding that we look at regenerative ag. People are demanding to know that their food ate what nature intended it to. People do want this stuff.
Yeah.
We need a critical mass of individuals who are demanding it from the fast food restaurants, from the gas stations. But again, nobody's demanding cultivated meat, and it doesn't really appear like anybody's demanding, plant-based meat alternatives. And yet venture dollars continue to get funneled into those areas. So let's see what consumers really want.
Right. Yeah. But the problem with that though, Griff, is that you can't control what consumers want. Consumers could want something that's bad for the environment. And if that's the case, then you can't save the environment if you think it's dying. Like to me, this is the argument that's made time and time again, right? People are stupid. That is the viewpoint of the expert class, right? That think that what they know is better informed than what the average person knows. And maybe that's true in certain instances. And we do have to rely on people who are specialized in their fields. But it's become so clear, I feel like, in the last maybe 4 years, let's say since COVID, that the expert class is absolutely full of shit and are so captured and are so willing to sacrifice the truth in pursuit of reputation, status, money, just not getting canceled, continuing to get funding for their lab. Like, it's a really sad thing because I think you see a lot of really, really qualified academics, scientists, researchers getting swept into this river where they almost can't get out of because the political and the economic incentives within it require them to follow the narrative, the prevailing narrative from where they're getting their funding. And they're getting their funding from, I don't know, the international, bodies that want to push their agendas. It's a sad thing. And I don't know. I mean, we need more independent researchers. We need more independent labs. We need more individuals who believe in the alternative to the narrative, right? The return to some of these natural processes, to put their money where their mouth is whenever possible and fund research that's actually honest. And I'm thankful that we're seeing some of that, and we're also seeing it anecdotally. And you say it all the time, anecdotal evidence is good evidence. And we're seeing ranchers that are able to turn what used to be monocrop farms or whatever, it's soil, completely depleted of nutrients, into places that are really rejuvenating, where they have, bird species returning, and, they're becoming really powerful examples of what can be done when these sorts of things are put into practice. And it's good to see, but we certainly are only scratching the surface in terms of balancing the scales monetarily. So,
yeah, I mean, thankfully we've got things like, have you heard of the Citizen Science Foundation?
I've not.
Well, I mean, it's started by the guys that are doing a lot of that lean mass hyper responder stuff. Mm-hmm. You have, like you said, this growing distrust from a large swath of the population. People don't trust nutrition researchers. People don't trust, they're trusting dietitians less and less. Mm-hmm. You're going to start seeing people taking this stuff into their own hands. Mm-hmm. And that's a beautiful thing.
For sure.
It's just, hopefully we can, defeat the powers that be with our common bond.
Yeah. Well, on that note, as I told you earlier, I just sent in my blood sample for my Cyfox. I don't know if we want to give them a shout out or not. They're not an advertiser.
So I think what we should do, when you get those results back, which hopefully will be by the time we have our next.
Should be. Yeah.
So when you get those back, we're going to talk about them. We'll dig into that. And that'll also be, at that point, people will also be able to access our Substack, which will be a bunch of basically expanding upon all of the things that we talk about and going a little deeper, maybe talking about some other fun stuff. So you're gonna, let's leave the people wanting something.
Yeah,
and I think digging into your blood work I mean, I'm salivating right now.
It's a little creepy, but not surprising coming from you. No, I'm excited to, I'm willing to donate my personal biological information to the public for the good of science.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Listen to the...
With some redaction, perhaps, but we'll see.
No, we're going to open it. We're going to go live as soon as those
live
results
stream
drop.
the results. That's right. Put them on WikiLeaks.
All right. Well, hell yeah. Well, thanks, dude. Thanks to anybody listening for subscribing, liking, telling everybody about how fucking hilarious and awesome and good looking we are. And hopefully we brought a little bit of value to your day, and we look forward to bringing you a lot more.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Griff.